Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Franchise Unfiltered podcast. Today, I'm joined by Scott Breimhorst, who is the Vice President of Franchise Development for Discover Strength. Scott, how you doing?
Good, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Been looking forward to doing this. You and I got introduced probably a couple months ago at this point, and I've enjoyed learning about your brand, Discover Strength, and now I'm excited to bring it here to the Franchise Unfiltered audience. So
Awesome.
appreciate you being here.
Hey, it's my pleasure and an honor, and yeah, it's been a great couple of months getting to know you and all the consultants in your network, really, but especially you, just with the conversations we've had about franchising and DS and all of it. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So Discover Strength, somewhat self-descriptive with the name, right? We're talking fitness, but fitness is a broad category. In the franchising space, there's a lot of different types of fitness, different modalities of fitness. So give us kind of a quick overview. What is Discover Strength? Like how are you serving your clients when it comes to their fitness and their health goals?
Yeah, absolutely. We like to talk about it in terms of like the problems we solve. So maybe I'd start there. You know how you today were rushing around, busy as heck, kids all over the place, dance competition, moving schedules. You're a busy person. You have zero time to waste on anything that doesn't work, and especially exercise. So we've solved that problem by delivering 2 30-minute workouts, strength training specific workouts to our clients with expert educated trainers. And you're really looking and feeling their best in a fraction of the time. So in the fitness space, which, as you mentioned, just has a lot, when you say fitness, it's a cloud.
Yeah.
I think the easiest way to break it down is say, if it's not boutique, move that off to the side. That's where we are. If it's a class fitness concept, we're not that at all.
Okay.
So the only things we'd be really similar to are strength training concepts. And then we're really differentiated in that we're doing one-on-one strength training as a modality.
Yes.
So inside of that, we have an evidence-based approach. And I want to come back to that later. Don't let me forget, because in fitness right now, that is a buzzword that is everywhere. We deliver the efficient workouts, so 30 minutes twice a week. And our clients are typically professionals. They are generally a higher net worth. They can afford a higher ticket kind of item. They like things that work, and they have zero time. Their billable hours are like super high.
Yeah.
So they love our workouts because they're just like in their day. They work 30 minutes, and it's probably the best hour of their week.
Yeah.
And we hire only degreed exercise physiologists to do the work.
Yeah. Those two, or there's two key things there that hit home with me: one-on-one strength training, and the fact that you hire the what did you call them?
They're kinesiology or exercise science majors, but they have to have a degree in the field.
Right. That's a big differentiator right there. And we'll talk about that more too, because that's one of the biggest, any business really, that's the biggest challenge, finding and keeping good people in a lot of the boutique fitness, which you referenced earlier. For those listening, if you're not familiar with that term, boutique fitness, we're talking, mostly group class-based membership type fitnesses, not the anytime fitnesses of the world where you've just got a big gym facility and people kind of come and go as they please. That's a big challenge in a lot of those types of concepts because they don't have any like particular requirements for who they hire. And you actually see good trainers or good fitness instructors bounce around, to a lot of these different concepts. And it kind of becomes this game of like, who's willing to pay the most. And then some of the instructors that are really, really good, they develop a following, right? Where people want to come specifically for their class. They're almost like, local celebrities in the fitness space in their community. And so if they go to another concept or even were to go and like open up their own shop somewhere, there's a good chance they're bringing a lot of members with them. So that's me a really important differentiator. So before we dive too deep into Discover Strength, though, I want to make sure we have a chance to touch on your background because you've got, in my opinion, an interesting background. A little bit different from what a lot of the folks in kind of the franchise development, franchise recruiting roles with most of these franchises have. So, how in the world did you get into franchising specifically? How did you link up with Discover Strength?
Yeah, I mean, my career before Discover Strength was all in some way, shape, or form supporting or working in Catholic education. So for 27 years, for a short time, I was an English teacher and a football coach. If you're from the Twin Cities, it was at Cretin-Durham Hall during the years Joe Mauer was there. So I had an awesome opportunity to work with.
I know Joe Mauer.
Yeah, it was great. He was my quarterback, and I coached the sophomore team. And yeah, we didn't lose any games.
No way. No way.
That was a blast. And then I became a principal and did school leadership for a really long time, was an executive director of a foundation and did major gift work, donor development, things like that.
Okay.
And then we moved over to a Catholic high school here in the Twin Cities that needed some help on their enrollment. And we took over the challenge of rebuilding that. Over 6 years, we kind of rehabbed the patient and brought that enrollment back. And I was looking for a new challenge. And for years, I'd really kept in touch with the Discover Strength leadership team. I'd been a client for almost a decade at that point.
Okay.
Great friends, just awesome people doing things for the right reason. And I thought, if I'm going to leave education and Catholic education, it's really going to be hard for me to find something as mission driven as that.
True. Yeah.
And Discover Strength is that. So our core purpose is to lead a movement in evidence-based exercise. We care if our clients are getting what they should get out of the workout. So if they don't show up for a workout, we're on the phone with them, getting them rescheduled. It's not like maybe a concept where they don't care if you show up, you paid your fee anyway, right? They asked me to come on board. And as it turns out, major gift donor development and franchise development are almost the same arc.
I had that same thought when you mentioned the major gift donor development, which I know next to nothing about, but I could imagine you're dealing with people that have resources and are looking for something to put those resources into, and they're probably evaluating numerous options.
Absolutely. And you just nailed it. So I don't really need to go into it too much. It's just as far from sales as a sales role can be. And we can't have franchise development being like that in our company anyway. My job here is I always say my first job is to protect my franchise convention. So nobody gets to the convention who shouldn't be in that room. And every franchise owner that I've worked with over the 3 years I've been here has carte blanche to literally punch me if somebody is in the room who should not be in there. So I need to find the right humans, figure out if this is something they're passionate about, and obviously educate them and onboard all of the kind of things that in franchising they need to know about. And then we approve them from there. So if I'm asking you for a major gift, let's say I want $100,000 to support a school, you have to be passionate about it first, or you're just not going to do it. Sure. And you and I have to have a great relationship. And you have to trust me and believe that the dollars are going to get spent where they're supposed to be spent. So again, same arc, and here I am.
So can you zoom in a little bit on a couple things you just mentioned there? So number one, that synergy or the similarities, that makes a lot of sense to me. Zoom in a little bit on, you mentioned the word approve, right? And how it's your responsibility to make sure that anyone you're working with that is not the right fit for Discover Strength and who you are looking for as your franchise partners doesn't essentially slip through the cracks, right? So tell me a little bit more about what that means for you guys, because this is something I spend a lot of time, coaching or talking about too with candidates that I work through this process. And I think in many cases, even though I hark on it, they think it's a little bit BS. They're like, oh yeah, right. Like if I'm willing to write a check to this franchisor to buy a franchise, they might tell me no. And you alluded to this, that certainly not all franchises look at it that way. There's a lot of franchises out there that use what we always call the mirror test, right? If you can breathe and fog up a mirror, they will probably let you buy their franchise. But the best brands out there, that's not their approach at all. They do have an approval process. So what does that mean for you guys at Discover Strength?
That's a great frame up. It starts with how we have set the system up in the first place. We're doing this in-house. So I'm not awarding franchises through another organization. We're not outsourcing the sales of that. And we do that because we're not looking to be in thousands of locations over the next 10 years. Our goal is really to be in 250 in 10 years. And we want less owners who are awesome, owning more locations and being wildly successful. And then we are going to feel like the last decade was incredible. We came to that number, Wes, by the way, when we asked the question, how many Ritz-Carltons are there in America? And there's less,
interesting.
there's less than 50.
Oh, wow.
And if
I would have guessed that for sure.
Right. And if we're a Ritz-Carlton of fitness, and if you walk into a studio, you'll see why we can't think that way. We can't be in 1,000 locations. We have to really focus in.
That's a good point. I remember when I first got to hear you talk about the brand, and Luke, the founder, was on that webinar too. I think you guys shared that goal with us, and I can remember almost kind of doing like a double take, right? I'm like 250, and cause you hear these types of goals thrown around a lot in franchising, and I would say for a brand like yours, in terms of like similar category, similar business model, you're going to hear goals like 250 locations or licenses awarded in the next 2 years or 3 years, or maybe even sooner than that if the brand is really aggressively looking to grow. So that was definitely kind of like a head turning moment for me as you guys were talking, where it's like, okay, that's a little bit different, right? Like they've got goals, they want to grow, but they clearly, if they mean what they say with that, they're clearly looking to take much more calculated growth and really make sure they're bringing in the right types of people. If you guys used the Ritz-Carlton analogy on that webinar, I totally missed it, because that makes a lot of sense though. And I think that's a really interesting way for you guys to look at it.
Yeah, thanks. And I think just kind of along with that, if you think about where a company's ego lies, you talk to a lot of brands, a lot of them, just like when they run into each other at conventions, they're like, how many are you at? And oh, we're at 840. Oh, that's awesome. That is not our ego at all. Our ego is in the workout. Number one, world-class workouts. And we are like on that, and profitability. Those are the two things that our egos are in. And that's it. Because at the end of the day, when we're at those 250 locations, we've become the destination for resistance exercise as medicine. And that's the other part of our big, hairy, audacious goal, is to be looked at. When you hear strength and you hear the medicinal effects, and if you're reading any of the research that is out there right now, strength is hot, but it's not a fad. It's just that the research is finally catching up with the world. And the impact that we can have doing resistance exercise on our clients means at scale and over time, with enough clients and enough training we're doing, we're literally saving people's lives from the things that strength training can help impact, diabetes, the impacts of GLP-1 drugs on the body. And by the way, side note, if you're on them, it's a great drug, but make sure you're strength training, because your muscle atrophy is crazy when you're using them.
Muscle and bone atrophy, right?
Yep. So make sure it's, and strength training directly affects that. So
is your take, and disclaimer, everyone, to my knowledge, Scott's not a doctor. I'm sure as hell not a doctor. So don't take your medical advice from us. But so your take is that the GLPs are essentially good if you are taking the proper measures to reduce the negative side effects that they could have, like, reduction in muscle and bone mass.
That's what the research suggests. We just did a podcast on it recently. I'll text it to you, Wes. It's really, really good.
Yeah. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I was listening to a podcast recently. I can't even remember what it was off the top of my head, but they were citing a bunch of studies and research that have been done on these GLP-1s. And it was Naval Ravikant, and he was on the Modern Wisdom podcast, and the host asked him, what is something happening right now that you think, 10 to 20 years from now, we'll look back on and say that was the most revolutionary thing that happened, but no one's really talking about it enough right now. He brought up the GLP-1s, said, it's one of the best drugs that's been, created in maybe ever, but in certainly a very long time. Because apparently a lot of the research is showing that it can help people with addictions. It can help with, I think he might have said can't reduce cancer risk and maybe, certainly diabetes if it's helping people lose weight and stuff. So anyways, that was pretty interesting because I hadn't heard some of that, but I definitely have heard and seen plenty of people talk about that, hey, there are some negative side effects with these, in particular to the muscle and bone mass reduction. But we'll get right back to the episode in just a minute. But if you've been considering business ownership, if you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode. Yep. Anyways, we'll get back to the regularly scheduled program. Instead of, my poor attempt at a health or medical podcast, but
it's all good. It's all good. The bottom line of the whole deal is you just got to make sure that your friends and family who are, it's not just that, Wes, it's, sedentary lifestyles or aging or just anything. Strength training is the number one input you can add to your life. And this is not flubbery, by the way. If you're strength training muscle failure, getting adequate rest, you're doing it infrequently, so you want to be doing it with enough rest in between that you're recovering. And if you're doing it with a trainer, the research is very clear. It's the best thing you can do.
Well, I can attest to that. I think you and I on a different call at one point, I shared a little bit of my experience. I have a trainer. Mine is virtually. I'm actually wearing their hat today. The company is called Suprahuman.
Okay.
And so I've been working with them for over 2 years now. I was not in great shape when I started working with them. I've probably lost somewhere between 30 to 35 pounds in the last 2.5 years. Definitely put on, good muscle. Like my whole physique has changed. So it's not like, how some people lose weight and then they're just like skinny fat. And they haven't had any real change in their physique. That's not been the case for me, but my whole thing was, I wasn't in great shape before, but it wasn't for lack of trying, right? It wasn't like I was just lazy and didn't put any effort into, working out or training. My diet was a big part of it, right? So that's a big part of what, my trainer has helped me with, is just getting my nutrition more dialed in and a science-backed approach to that, but also one that is not so limiting or so restrictive that it's not been sustainable or not been something that I can incorporate into my lifestyle. Mm-hmm. But the strength training, because that's what we do, right? Other than he wants me to try to walk for 45 to 60 minutes a day. That is the only cardio that he has ever recommended for me. I have a Peloton down in my gym. He's like, dude, if you want to do the Peloton once a week, that's great, but that's nothing more than cardiovascular health and endurance. It's not going to help you when it comes to losing weight. So anyways, it's a science-backed strength training program that he's had me on. And that was one of the biggest things I've learned through this whole process, which I think a lot of people don't know. And it sounds like more and more people are becoming aware of it. But if your goal is to lose weight, to lose fat, resistance training, progressive strength training is one of, if not the best things you can do, combined with a better diet to lose weight.
100%.
And a lot of people think I got to get on the treadmill for 2 hours a day or do all of these very rigorous, exhausting workouts, and it's not going to do the trick.
Yeah. I mean, most of our clients do all kinds of stuff. They run marathons, they climb mountains, they do a boutique spin class somewhere because they enjoy it and it does have an impact. I mean, cardiovascular. You need calorie deficit and you need strength training,
Yeah.
and then you're there. So,
Yeah.
so we've been doing this for 19 years. We're not a new company at all. On the franchise side, we've only been franchising for 4 years, but I've been honored really in this role and as a client to see what you just described at scale. So, we're in 24 locations right now. We'll open 2 more next month. We'll open 15 more this year. We have thousands of clients, and we have exercise physiologists and masters of kinesiology in our system who are reading the research that you are impacted by with your trainer, and bringing it to the ground. So I guess one of the biggest differentiators that you're going to see in one of our locations is just who's there. So our clients are just not going to walk into a gym bro kind of gym. And by the way, I know there's a franchise called Gym Bros. I'm not picking on you. I'm talking about like loud music.
I think I know gym guys. Maybe
Yeah,
there's probably gym bros out there. It wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're just not like attracted to that. In fact, a lot of them would be totally intimidated by it. But when we have the clients there in front of us, and it's behind me on the wall, it's 1 rep, 1 set, 1 client for 30 minutes, and they're getting an intense workout at their intensity, and it's safe, and they're seeing those results you're describing. It's just awesome. So to do that, back to your kind of question about the process, our funnel gets tight pretty quick. The first big presentation, I start talking about our core values and our core purpose, and I start asking questions right off the bat. And if a candidate can't like really accurately describe how these core values we have speak to them, it's just not going to be a fit. And then when I talk about our core purpose of leading that movement of evidence-based exercise, some of them are just not into that. And so I've had calls that are supposed to be an hour go 15 minutes, and then we just shake hands and kind of move on. So
how do you find people react to that when you kind of proactively say, hey, I just don't see this being a fit? Are people shocked by it? Are they angry? Or do you feel like they're appreciative that, hey, I'd rather figure this out early on instead of sinking a bunch of time into this if it is not the right fit?
Well, if we roll through the conversation and you were the candidate across from me and I got through our core values and I always put them back up and I'd say, just reflect back on me how learning, servant leadership, creating our own future, and being science-based really has spoken to you in your life, and they struggle with it. So what I'll do then is just kind of stop sharing my screen. And I'm like, let's just push pause on that. And then I'll talk about why it's so important. I'll pick anyone out, but like, if science-based is not a core value, you're not going to read the weekly research articles and put them into practice with your team. And therefore, we can't have you in the system because you will not be delivering a Discover Strength level experience.
World-class workout.
And if creating your own future, like literally not being a victim, is not something you can demonstrate and really talk about how you've overcome things, then there's no sense in moving on. I think that's one in franchising that better be the core value.
That's got to be. Yeah, not enough brands do a good enough job of that. And man, I've seen, because a lot of the people that I'm talking to and working with, and same for you, if they get into a franchise, it's going to be their first time owning a business. And I mean, I know, especially back when I've seen it as a consultant, but back when I was doing franchise development, in a similar seat to yours, we had people that we approved and became franchisees, and it was like hands down, no brainer. We thought these people were going to be great, but they'd never owned a business before. And sometimes you just don't know how someone is going to respond to the type of pressure that business ownership brings until they're in it. And some people are not going to be cut out for it. And so I think in some ways there's not a perfect science to like figuring that out until they are in the business and doing it. But the way you guys are running this process and, asking some of these, not even necessarily hard questions, but just deeper questions to really get a sense of like, okay, what's the motivation here? What are the values? And let's kind of see what you're made of. Like, how have you been tested and how did you respond to that?
Totally. And I think along the way, every single presentation we go through has the 12 attributes of a like a great DS owner. And I repeat them every single time. And we just get more into the weeds on each one of them as they're thinking about, can I be that? Or can I overcome that if that's a struggle for me? All the way from core values to capitalization and things like that. So to answer your question, it becomes really obvious to them if it's just not going to be a great fit. And then we just try to shake hands and remain friends. So I think if you looked inside behind the curtain at my role, my background, my time in my life, I'm 50, almost 2 years old. This is a great career swing for me after all that time in education, but I'm pretty good. I can, I'll land on my feet if like things didn't work out. I'm happy with where I'm at, but how I'm compensated does not reflect like eating what I kill. And so I'm compensated to make sure the right people get in the room.
Yeah.
And I don't want to overburden this point, but it is really important, I think, as a lot of the people listening to this are potential owners. If you're the kind of person who gets kind of turned on by the stuff that I talked about now and you're passionate about fitness, it might be a fit. If you also can think of yourselves as a professional services model where, like Merrill Lynch is looking for the hottest finance kids coming out of the best universities, that's who we're looking for. So a part of all of what I just said.
In terms of your trainers.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You're going to get them young. You're going to train them in the system we have. And then we rarely lose exercise physiologists here. It's like an 87% retention rate, and that's upside down from fitness. It's the other.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's got to be the, one of the biggest, I would say, retention rate of trainers and member retention rate are the two biggest, challenges for a lot of these fitness concepts out there. Some of the fitness stuff, it's just, oh, this is new. This is exciting. Everyone's buzzing about this new, fitness place that opened up in town, and, people go and try it. I mean, now there's all types of these, what do they call them? Like class pass memberships and stuff that you can buy. And that allows you to like hop around, to different places. And maybe that's a good way to get someone to come in and try your workout. But I don't know, it's not a very sticky client. And, that's something that sticks out to me, about you guys, right? Like you're positioning yourselves as the Ritz-Carlton of fitness. And so inherently, you're catering to a higher end of clientele that's really going to value that one-on-one approach, that science-based. I really like I may not get it exactly right, but the terminology used earlier where it was resistance training medicine.
Yeah, we want to be the destination for resistance exercise as medicine.
Yeah. Resistance exercise as medicine. Yeah, I think that's such a good way of looking at it. And I do think more and more people are cluing into the fact that like, okay, that's legit. It's always been that way. Yep. Right. And like, if you look at the type of equipment that you guys are using and the types of workouts people are going through, it's not anything crazy. It's not some outlandish, type of workout that I think sometimes these places, if that's more of their approach, it gets people's attention. They want to come try it, but they're not necessarily going to stick with it. Like what you guys are doing and teaching your clients is just kind of the tried and true science-backed strength training that is going to get results. It's not going to go out of style. It's not the flashiest, but it will get results. And in this type of business, you have to be able to get results for your clients if you want them to keep coming back.
Yeah.
And then if you want the higher end clients, you've got to deliver that more personalized, customer experience as well.
Totally.
So,
I mean, Wes, when you walk in the door as a client, if you walked into the door at St. Louis Park, where I'm at now in Minnesota, your EP, your exercise physiologist, is going to meet you at the door, shake your hand, which incidentally with young people is not a thing they just did when they were kids. I mean, COVID killed handshakes for a while.
Yeah, and that's strange.
Train on that, like how to do a proper warm welcome handshake. How's the shoulder?
Eye contact.
It dinged a little bit. I've got you on this card today. We're going through these things, and here's what it's going to do for your body. Then out in the session, they're actually teaching them teaching points that we always have kind of weekly that we want to make sure they understand about strength training's effect on stretching or breathing or different things like that. And again, it gives it a very effective it's an effective modality that our clients just can't get anywhere else. Let me tell you one quick side story on that. For a very long time, my wife and I, she's a very busy professional, just needed something on the calendar every week for an hour. And we figured and I won't name the concept, but we signed up for a weekly membership at a class fitness concept. Again, I'm not going to tell you what it is. And I made a deal with the GM. I said, I'm going to come in here and I'll pay you the money, but I'm running on your treadmill for 1 hour a week. That's what you're getting paid for. I'm not going to the other machine and I'm not going to the weights. And he's like, why? And I said, well, you have weights here, but you don't have any strength training. And I do it at Discover Strength. So for many, many years, I did that. And we'd have clients who'd hear that story and they kind of not mimicked it, but just did the same thing. Like, I just want access to the treadmill and a schedule.
Just want access to the cardio equipment. So with one other thing I want to point out in terms of like the experience that you guys deliver, because it was a little bit of a head scratcher for me when I first heard this and like saw pictures of it on the website. Now I get it, but like your EPs, as you call them, exercise physiologists,
correct?
They wear ties and slacks. Like this is a high end deal. And again, at first I didn't quite get that, but now it makes sense, especially better understanding like who your clientele is. And, just to kind of reiterate this point and then we'll move on, but
sure.
Your clientele is not going to be attracted to, the concept that's blaring loud music and has flashing lights. And it's almost more of a social, component as it is going for the workout. There's a place for that, right? The younger demographic, they're going to like that. But if I had to guess, maybe I'm wrong on this, I would say like your kind of typical client avatar is probably someone 40 and above, professional, makes good money. As you've already said, time is an absolute, premium for them. And they are going to value that more personalized one-on-one approach. So, is that a pretty accurate assessment?
You nailed it. Our avatar for marketing, their names are Michael and Mary. They're high-end salespeople, high buck attorneys. They travel like 20 weeks out of the year. They wear great shoes. They take their kids on ski trips, and they have zero time to waste on anything that doesn't work. And they do appreciate the tie. It's not a gimmick for us, and it is a look that we want to make sure we're portraying, but it's also like a reflection of our servant leadership core value. When you walk in the door someday, Wes, and I can't wait for you to try a workout. What this says is I got ready for you today. This 30 minutes you're going to have, I prepared for it. I've got my iPad ready to go with your exercise prescription and absolutely everything I need. And by the way, I like literally dressed up for you. And here we go.
Now I feel like a jerk, Scott, because I'm sitting here in a t-shirt and my hat. So
and another fitness concept brand. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Next time I'll, they're not a franchise.
Oh, okay.
So,
got it.
and that wasn't planned. We can blur this out if we need to.
I want to meet the guy. It's all good.
I didn't even think about that, but no, it makes a statement for sure. And again, given the type of clientele that you're working with, they probably appreciate it more than even some people would. So I want to talk a little bit more about this from kind of a customer experience side of things, and then I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about the business model itself and what the opportunity really entails for prospective franchisees. 2 30-minute workouts a week. Are your EPs also giving clients like programs that they should be doing outside of the Discover Strength gym when they're not in there? Other types of workouts, cardio, like I mentioned, my trainer, he's real big on like, hey man, if you can walk 45 to 60 minutes a day in addition to whatever normal walking around, that's just going to keep you moving, which is going to help the cause for everything else that we're working towards. And is there a nutrition component as well where they're helping clients maybe dial in their nutrition a little bit better?
Got it. So the answer is no. We are very strict on our strategic niche, which is personalized strength training. That is literally all we do.
Okay.
Our EPs are experts in that, and our whole core growth plan, which takes them from like an apprentice trainer all the way through a partner level trainer, focuses in on that. So we don't do nutrition advice. We'll talk a little bit about creatine, but we don't do any supplement kind of conversations. We don't create exercise prescriptions outside of the workout we have. I'm sure there's conversations about those things, but
Like if someone's traveling and won't be able to get in for a week or two, maybe the trainer's like, well, hey, here's some things that, maybe you can do from the hotel if you want to get something in.
we have
Maybe
a virtual option for that. So usually when they're traveling, they're doing a virtual workout. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
So then, again, holding firm to that strategic niche is just so important for us. It's the philosophy of, you've heard the words like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And Andrew Carnegie said, absolutely put all your eggs in one basket and then spend all your time watching that basket. And that's
worked out pretty well for him.
It sure did. So that's where we're at. If the second we start drifting into, I brought up supplements or just things like that, we're going to drift away from we're going to be an inverse of the strength of our brand because the scope is going to go away.
Yeah. So, no, that makes sense. That's a good answer.
And then from the business perspective, you don't have all kinds of things to worry about as an owner.
Well, yeah, that's a plus. I definitely see a lot of not even just franchises, but a lot of businesses out there, I think, trying to do too many things, trying to be too much to too many people. And to your point, there is a lot to be said for just really honing in on what it is that you do best. And then, as you've already mentioned several times today, being world-class at it. So no, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's shift gears. Tell me a little bit about the founder of the company. You said been in business for 19 years now, franchising for 4 years. Founder's name is Luke. What's Luke's background? How did he get into this, decide to start it? Like, how did it all kind of come together?
Yeah, Luke, his name is Luke Carlson. He's an amazing human being, leader. He's right now speaking across the nation to business leaders on business development. So he's really honed a lot of things in his life. But the backstory is he grew up in Shakopee, Minnesota, which incidentally is 10 miles from where I grew up. And I married a girl from Shakopee. And Luke, in high school, had a class where you could write a letter to or call companies and see if they would let you kind of apprentice or just intern with them for a semester. And he writes a letter to the strength and conditioning coach of the Minnesota Vikings, figuring there's never going to be any opportunity. They're never going to say yes. And they said yes. So Luke starts training professional athletes as a high school student in like an unbelievable facility with like real awesome strength training, right? And he goes to the University of Minnesota, gets a kinesiology degree, and he continues to train professional athletes with the Vikings. And the intent for him career-wise was going to go two ways. Either he'd be a strength and conditioning coach in the NFL, or he would start a professor track and get into a university and teach. He's also brilliant. I hope he watches. I didn't mean to like pump you up there too much, Luke, but you literally are. So, and then,
I can edit that out if you want.
No, leave it in. I need.
Or we can put it in a clip and blast it all over social media. However you want us to handle it, we can play it either way.
I love it. I'll leave that up to you. Right. So then somebody gets in his ear who knows a little bit about business and knows Luke really well and says, hey, you've got this business genetic thing. You maybe want to think about opening a business of some kind. So long story short, he travels to Gainesville, Florida, meets one of the most successful gym owners, fitness like facility owners. It's more of a large club, but it's someone who knows everything about everything in fitness, and he spends the day with them. And he comes back and makes the decision to start Discover Strength.
Okay.
So he opens up a location in Plymouth, Minnesota, still open to this day. We moved it actually 2 months ago, about a mile down the road, to a little bigger facility because we just couldn't take any more clients there. And grew to 6 corporate-owned locations, kind of really in a slow growth, but in a good, solid growth. Let's get these place is going really well. And then he reads a book on franchising and realizes that everything, Wes, you talk about in your podcast, and I know I saw your podcast with Tom Dufour, what are you looking for with a new franchise concept? We checked all the boxes. So we work with some consultants and decide to franchise. Then the pandemic hits right on top of that.
Beautiful time.
Great timing. I came on board in 2022 and started to work with Luke. And, we just signed this morning our 52nd overall location, really our 44th franchise location.
Okay. So how many franchisees do you have that make up those 52 licenses?
It's about 30 groups. So some are single, some are multiple. We have some multi-unit owners kind of in the system.
But as you mentioned earlier, long term, as you guys want to hit somewhere around 250 open locations over the next 10 years or so, you really see that being through a smaller group of really, really well qualified owners that are opening and developing multiple locations. That's more, and I mean, the model lends itself to a multi-unit ownership play.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. It's a great conversation for me to have with a qualified owner who's about to be approved. It's like, what does success look like for you in about 5 years? And if they're like, hey, I want to own one, I want to grow it to doing like 550 sessions a week. I want to train clients on the floor, and I want to grow a team, and that's it. And we're like, awesome, you're it. The next guy might be like, I want to have 3 of them open and thriving in the next 5 years, say. And then we'll start to kind of protect territory around them to make sure they have space to breathe and time to grow. And then we'll start to own or develop more locations with them over time. It provides everybody an opportunity to make sure this is an owner who really can do it and should be that person who owns lots of locations and isn't going to get over their head too quickly. We really want to, we just want to have no closures. Like if we can avoid that over our arc, like that's going to be a hallmark.
So tell me about some of your top performing owners, or just, owners that you would say are the best fit for everything that you have, talked about so far in terms of, who you guys are looking for as Discover Strength owners. And we don't have to get into revenue numbers and things like that, but I definitely want to hear some examples. Like give me some examples of people that are really thriving in your system and that you see, being some of these key players long term, and who do you want more of that are like them?
Okay. I'm going to put a disclaimer in here to all of the DS franchise owners. If I don't name you here, it doesn't mean I don't love you. Wes has a time limit on this. I can't name you all.
Good call.
Okay. So I mean, I'm going to put him in kind of some categories. We've got Brad in Maple Grove owns one location. He was our second franchisee by a month open. He has built an amazing team. At the beginning, he burned the boats, jumped in, started training clients. He's a networking machine. He's in all the business networking groups, and it's fantastic, and they're killing it. Our first franchisee, well, it's 2 of them. It's Tyler and Jess, and they own 2 locations here in the Twin Cities now. Amazing leaders, both kept their full-time jobs when they started. He's still a big-time mergers and acquisitions guy for Deloitte. She was a high-level marketer. And by the way, both military. He was a submarine engineer. She was like an aerospace developer of projects in the Air Force. So brilliant people apparently own Discover Strengths.
Sounds like it.
They own 2 now, great teams, and we'll open up a couple more coming up here. I'm going to save my favorite story for last, by the way. We've got an owner in Shakopee who owns Chanhassen as well in Minnesota, who just signed recently for 2 more locations in the Naples kind of area of Florida. Successful on it for different reasons. He just really is trusting of his team and kind of gives them the tools to really take the playbook and make it happen. And just has developed an unbelievable culture in that group.
So he's got locations in multiple states, it sounds like?
He's developing in Florida. They're not open yet.
In Florida. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. He's got a really unbelievable game plan we've worked on for a few months, and it's going to be awesome. And then I'm not going to call it the crown jewel story because I'm going to pump her ego up too much, but we have an awesome owner who started with us as an unpaid intern, like out of college, basically,
Oh, wow.
and worked her way as an exercise physiologist all the way to be the general manager of what at the time was our highest volume location. Like,
Okay.
it's where I'm at now in St. Louis Park, 1,600 square feet. And they were doing 600 sessions a week. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Give us some context around the number of sessions per week. Again, I don't like to get into like dollar amounts so much, but like with any of these fitness businesses, you're going to look at, some of your key metrics are going to be number of members or like number of sessions per week. So, and look, anyone listening, this can vary, right? Because, the size of these locations could be different. Your overhead expenses could be different, but in general, like give me a ballpark. How many members do you need, or how many weekly sessions do you need to average to at least cover your operating nut every month and be cash flow break even?
Yeah. Well, as a franchise development professional, I'm required to start with it depends.
Yeah.
And I'm going to move
and
into
it does. I mean, for good reason. You're
so
required
it
to
depends
say
on the
that.
rent
Definitely does
market.
depend.
Yeah. But in our
Yep.
FTD, we provide an average session revenue of between $49 and $51. Let's just use 50 as an even number of what a session is going to pay. And we do have a 3-person small group option that probably is about 15% of a location's sessions. And then you just start doing the math on that. How they train twice a week, calculate how many sessions. We always do things in weeks. How many sessions per week at whatever kind of dollar intake you want to apply to that. And then the other, it depends, is are your clients mainly training twice per week? Or are some of them doing it less frequently? So when I'm working with your candidates, I'm always telling them, you got to not assume they're all going to train exactly twice a week. Factor it for less frequency so you can be safe in your estimate.
Conservative on that. Yeah. Do any members train more than 2 times a week ever?
They'll sneak one in sometimes, but we usually don't let them, honestly. And if you had a workout, you'd understand why. It's intense. So
I guess I'm not pushing myself hard enough.
I know. We got to get you in. And I was talking about Maddie, the intern who elevated to the GM role, and she was just an amazing exercise physiologist and person and human. And she's like, at that point, like 28 years old.
Yeah.
We awarded her a location literally 1.5 miles to the east of where we are right now. It's on 50th in France. And if you're from Minnesota, you know what that means. Like, that's where you need to be if you're a distinctive brand. And she exploded, and the new FDD is not out yet, or I'd give you the number for how she did in her first year. And she signed for Hudson, Wisconsin. So she's a multi-unit owner at 30 years old. And she just signed literally this morning for another location just south of her current location, because she really can't take any more sessions there because she's just too full.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's
a cool story. I love hearing, these stories of younger people getting involved as a franchise owner, and, it just puts them on a totally different trajectory. Not that it's not great for someone that's in their 40s or 50s or, later stage in their career. It can and is phenomenal for them as well. But, like my wife and I'm a few years older than my wife. I think she was 27 maybe when we bought our first franchise. So I would have been 30, had just had our first kid. And, that was almost 8 years ago. I look back on that and it's like, wow, that definitely just put us on a different track. And it was hard work, still is. But, it's like, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, what would be different if we hadn't taken that step, bet on ourselves? A lot of things fell into place, right? I fell backwards into franchising. A few years prior to that, I had so many good mentors and people that, have helped us and continue to help us along the way. But I always like those stories of hearing, younger people. We'll get right back to the episode, but I wanted to quickly share a free resource with you. If you're curious about franchise ownership and want to learn more about how countless people, including myself, have leveraged franchising as a way to create more freedom for themselves and to take control of their livelihood, I've put together an ebook. It's called Franchise Wealth Creation, and it's the perfect starting point for anyone that's just curious to learn more about this whole franchise thing and how I've helped hundreds of other people navigate all the steps involved in understanding and researching franchising. So click the link in the show notes, fill out a short form. I'll send you the ebook. I think it's a great starting point if you're curious at all about learning more about franchising. All right, let's get back to the episode. I'm curious, and if you don't know or don't feel comfortable saying, with this franchisee you just mentioned, started out as an unpaid intern, 28, buys her first franchise. How did she fund it? Because you guys are not a low cost franchise,
Right.
In my opinion. So how did she get the capital that she needed to do it? Because I think that's something that a lot of younger people, they just kind of assume like, hey, I'm not financially in a situation where I could pull something like this off yet.
Yeah, she kicked off with some support, family support, which is a great story in franchising. It happens all the time.
It does, yeah.
And so, without going too far into the weeds, now it's it doesn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So what she had, and I think what we have in our system, are people that we believe in. Their networks believe in them. It's a great meshing of relationships, of support. We now have 3 of our GMs who've worked their way through the system who are owners or in development to be owners. And so we're growing with some really interesting different paths to franchising. You've got the ones you mentioned, 50 plus like me. I'm ready to maybe jump out of corporate America. And you've got Maddie over here who's about to become a franchise mogul and running amazing studios.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool. I want to go back to, some of what we touched on with number of sessions. And I think we kind of laid enough breadcrumbs there to where people can do some back of the napkin math on, what that piece of it could kind of look like. But here's a question I have, and maybe this is devil's advocate a little bit, but this is, I know something that kind of I wondered about when I first got introduced to this brand. Because one of the things that attracts a lot of people to boutique fitness, group class membership based models is the scalability of it, right? Because you can essentially have far more paying customers in at one time. It's a, one to many labor model in a lot of cases. But you guys are doing one-to-one primarily. I think you said you do have a very small group option, but that's not a huge percentage of your overall revenue mix.
Right.
So how does this thing compare from a scalability standpoint, looking at a single location and the revenue potential, when you don't have some of those same advantages? Is it the fact that it's a pretty short workout, it's 30 minutes, and it's obviously you're able to charge more than some of these other places on a per session or, per client basis? But I mean, how does that compare in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. I'm just in my head kind of spinning through other fitness concepts to think about, like, on the scaling of an individual.
I mean, I've seen the numbers in your FTD, and we don't need to throw them out here, but I mean, your AUV, what we would call average unit volume, is pretty damn solid, from what I've seen, and better than AUVs I've seen for many other kind of boutique fitness. So that, like I said, it was just a little bit of a head scratcher for me. It's clearly working for you guys, but that's what attracts so many people to the group class membership based stuff. Is your labor costs are low because you have, maybe 1 to 2 instructors leading. I mean, in some of these concepts, 20 to 30 members per class or per session. You guys are different. Are you able to have multiple clients in the gym at the same time, just working with different EPs? Is that part of it?
Now I'm framing up your question a little bit better. So yes, on a busy floor, I was with one of the candidates from a franchise consultant recently, and she was kind of asking the same question. I'm like, well, how about if we just hop on FaceTime and I'll literally walk downstairs and you can see a floor. It's just an average Tuesday. There were 6 exercise physiologists on the floor. 5 of them had one-on-ones going, and one of them was doing a 3-person group.
Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah.
So there's 23.
And you are Sorry, you are charging more than a lot of these boutique fitness. I mean, if it's average of $50 a session, most people are 1 to 2 sessions a week. Yeah, that's probably a good bit, higher average, if you want to call it monthly membership rate than what a lot of these other fitness concepts are able to charge.
Totally. And then internally, you're scaling your staffing with the actual clientele and size of session volume that you have. So there's a protection on your bottom line on the cost per employee side that works out really well.
Are the EPs just paid a certain amount per session, or are they salary? Because again, you're if you put it in like Wall Street terms, you guys are going after some of the top talent coming out of these exercise science programs. Are they expecting a salary? Can they make more on a per session basis? Like, how do you structure the comp so that it still makes sense for the owner and their bottom line, but you're able to attract and keep some of this top talent?
God, that's a great question. So there's a lot to this. I'll start with they have a base that we don't let them go below. And then they're paid basically commissions over that based on the amount of time they're training clients, basically client generating revenue time. So when they're actually training clients, they're kind of earning over and above that. But inside of that, there's a lot going on. So back to the professional services model, you start out at an investment firm at a kind of level, and then you upscale with, in our case, certifications. We're rating them. So there's always trainer ratings going on. And then they move through a core growth plan that is tiered. It goes tier 1, tier 2. There's some kind of longevity factors in there. How long have you been doing it? You get to senior exercise physiologist. Then you're a partner when you're kind of at the top. And when you hear partner and you hear firm, you know what that means. Like, you're brought inside a little bit and you're given kind of more access to what your top.
Is there a profit share component to that in some cases?
There is. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yep. I like that a lot. Yep. I'm a big believer that I don't care what your business is. If you have key critical people on your team, give them a piece of the pie, give them some skin in the game, give them some freaking upside, and they're going to go twice as hard for you, and they're going to be loyal
so it's profit sharing for us, and it's based on the company's success. So it's an ability for us as a system to really reward that excellence across the board.
Have you had any trouble getting franchisees to buy, or prospective franchisees to buy into that? I mean, you probably can't dictate how they compensate their folks anyways. You can tell them how you've done it, what you found to be successful, best practices, things like that. Have you found that most of your franchisees have adopted that or a similar comp strategy for their people, or has anyone resisted that a little bit?
I'll put it like this. At this moment, every franchisee is running our compensation plate.
Yeah.
There's maybe a little tweak here and there, and we have had in the past.
Yeah. I mean, there's various ways you can structure it. I just think if you've got people that are critical to your business and you don't want to lose that person, give them a little piece of the pie. And you're just gonna increase the size of the pie dramatically if you do that. Can you go a couple more minutes?
Absolutely. No, I'm great. Sure? I'm great.
All right. So one more question on the trainer piece of this. Do most of I imagine most of your clients, their preference is to work with the same trainer. They're not, or does it vary?
It's the opposite of that, actually. If you polled them and said, do you require or massively prefer a single EP, they might at about 15-ish% say yes.
Really?
And a lot of times that's only based on the fact that maybe they always train at 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday and Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and they happen to have the same person who just is there.
Yeah.
But to your question earlier about class passes and bouncing around, our clients are clients of the brand of Discover Strength. So we have a shared client model. Our exercise physiologists are not out there trying to build up a book of clients. The only kind of battle, if you want to look at it like that, and it's not a battle, but the expertise of the EPs gets around a little bit. And we have
I'm
exercise
sure. Yeah,
physiologists that you can't get on their schedule. They're pre-booked for the rest of eternity. And by the way, they get paid a really high percentage of the revenue because they can.
sure.
And so we really have young people, these exercise physiologists, striving to be masters of the craft. And that's how they build up their clientele. So we do have some who really just always like to work with the same person. They've got a good
Yeah.
relationship. But I personally, it's been 11 years I've been training with DS, have never cared one bit. In fact, when I would sign up for my sessions and they would say, well, do you want, Wes or Scott or whatever? I'd be like, I just don't care. Give me whoever you want.
And I assume there's in your back office system, there's a record of, hey, this is the program this person's been on. I know, like with my trainer, we've got an app because again, it's all virtual. It's not face to face. My guy's actually based out of the UK, so he writes workouts for me. I go in, I log number of reps, weight, all of that, and then it keeps track of it because usually he'll write me a set of workouts, and we'll do that same regimen each week for 2 or 3 months at least, and then maybe we change up the workouts a little bit, but it's progressive, right? It's
Yep.
tracking everything, and that's one way that I can tell, am I progressing? Am I actually getting stronger? I imagine you've got something of that nature so that a new trainer, if they've never worked with this particular client, it's not like you're coming in blind on what they've been doing and what they should be doing.
100%. And it's across the system. So they'll have an iPad with your name.
Yeah.
And it will be whatever we call them cards. And it's a holdover from when we used to use actual like clipboards with cards. Now it's an iPad.
Right. Yeah.
So you'll have 3 cards of an exercise prescription with seats, weights, reps you did, notes, intensity levels. So we rate every client is rated 1 through 5 on intensity, but it's rated by like literally machine you're working on. So if you have a low back issue, maybe your low back machine is a intensity 1, but man, you're a beast and you just want to get crushed on chest press. When you get on that machine, you might be a 5, and then how we load you after you've failed kind of relates to that. But you can be a regular client here in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, head over to the Colony in Texas, just west of Plano, and they'll look at the card, and DeMarcus will be like, yep, got you. And then it might ask a couple extra questions about something that's on there, but you're all set to go. Yep.
Okay, that's cool. And as you've kind of described your typical client to us, a lot of them are, busy corporate executives traveling a lot. I guess that's a real benefit, right? Where, if you are in a city that has a Discover Strength while you're traveling, you can go in and not really miss a beat, with your workout. And then I know you mentioned it, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but it sounds like you guys have a virtual component to this as well. Where is that like a live virtual type workout, or is it like just pre-recorded stuff and you're kind of following along?
No, it's live. So if I'm in a hotel, so by the way, this is a holdover from COVID. So we pivoted to a completely virtual kind of modality here. In Minnesota was a complete lockdown state during COVID. We developed an unbelievable virtual workout. We lost almost no clients. We furloughed 0 employees. And some of our clients just really like it. And we have a cabin culture in Minnesota where people go north to their cabins in the summer. And then they just pop in their AirPods. They put a phone where the EP can see them. And then they take them through the workout with whatever things are available. There's some recommended.
Good luck in some hotel gyms.
I've had ones where I've started and I'm like, we are doing body weight only. I'm not even going to touch that machine. So
I like anytime I travel and I'm trying to work out in a hotel gym, a lot of what my trainer writes for me is honestly dumbbell and body weight stuff anyways. Like, you don't need a lot of like crazy fancy equipment to get results. It certainly helps if you have it. And I know you guys have a very, very high end equipment package, which makes a lot of sense given everything that we've talked about today. But TRX bands, I take those with me when I travel. And do you know what TRX bands are? Yeah, those are great. You can get a lot of different exercises in with those. So if you're in a really crappy hotel gym, you can usually find somewhere to clip them and still get a pretty productive workout in.
Yeah, the high end machines are there for a reason, multiple reasons. Number one, for your candidates, they're going to outlive their depreciation. They're just going to be there forever. Our
Yeah,
18-year-old location has mainly the same equipment. Like,
that's wild.
and then two, the people you hire are going to be masters of the craft, and you've got to give them the tools to do that. I mean, you don't want your surgeon using subpar surgical instruments. Like,
Rusty scalpels.
it makes no sense to do it. So
Yeah,
we put the money into it for those reasons, and our clients truly appreciate it.
yeah, I bet. I bet. Man, there's so much more that we could get in. We'll do a round two at some point.
Yeah.
It's always a lot of fun to have a brand come back on every so often, give us some good updates. I'd love to maybe have one of your franchisees come on. I'm definitely going to be recommending Discover Strength to people that I'm working with, as I feel it's a good fit. As you did I think a really good job explaining today. You guys look very, very critically at who is the right franchise partner for Discover Strength. Same thing I do with everyone I'm working with, right? I spend a lot of my time really getting to know the brands that I work with, like you and I are doing today. We've had numerous of these discussions off camera. I really like to spend time getting to know the people behind the brand. That's such a big part, of this as well, the culture fit. And as you talked about today, did the values align? So certainly not everyone I work with is Discover Strength going to be the right fit based on their goals and based on what you guys are looking for. But definitely, excited to have the opportunity to recommend a brand like Discover Strength to people that I'm working with that I think it could be a good fit for. In closing, is there anything I didn't ask you about that you wish I would have that we could touch on quickly?
I think in some way, shape, or form, we hit everything along the way. And so, no, I don't have a huge list of things I wish you'd asked about. I'm really excited about.
Give us just real quick, because this is probably a question that a lot of people would have come to mind. How big are your locations typically, square
You're
footage
looking for
wise?
like 1,850, maybe 1,900 to 2,100 square
Yeah,
feet.
so not a huge footprint. We're not talking Anytime Fitness or anything close to that in terms of the footprint that you need. So very similar to boutique fitness in that regard. You don't need a huge square footage, and I imagine because of the high end aspects of the brand, you want to be in a nice area of town, probably Class A real estate for those that are familiar with commercial real estate. But wanted to make sure we kind of touched on that. But I don't know, Scott, anything else you want to
I would say,
know about?
I use this phrase every once in a while. It's from a book I used to teach when I was an English teacher. And it was like trying to describe whatever was being described in the book is like trying to describe what chocolate tastes like. So we talked a lot about the workout here, a lot about the experience. To any of your listeners or viewers who like just want to check it out, literally just email me or look at our website at where we have locations. I will get you in and get you set up for just checking it out. So you can just see what it's like,
Yeah, you have to. It's one thing to talk about it. At the very least, folks listening, go check out their website. I think, even just looking at some pictures or, they've got some good videos on there, getting a sense of the look and feel of these locations. I wanted to spend a lot of time talking about the actual workout and the process today, probably more so than I do with a lot of brands, talking about the actual widget, if you will, because, I think the common conception is that fitness is oversaturated and there's just so many options. And I agree with that to some extent, but you guys are very different. You're positioned very differently. I think going after a demographic that is largely kind of neglected by a lot of these other, especially like group class type fitness concepts. So I wanted to make sure we we drove that point home. So, for those listening that, some of this has piqued your interest in terms of, hey, this could be the type of business that I'm looking for, definitely reach out to me, and I can help get you connected with Scott and the right folks over there. And as you've seen today, Scott's very, very adamant about making sure it's a good fit for everyone involved. So it's not a sales process. And that's the case with really all of the franchise companies that I work with. They're looking at it the same way, right? They've got to bring in the right types of franchise owners. They're not looking to sell someone or certainly overpromise and under-deliver, and then have, franchisees coming in with unrealistic expectations. That's just a recipe for failure. So, yeah, it's a really interesting opportunity, and I'm glad to, be working with you guys in the capacity that I am. So we'll make sure we put links to websites, social media handles, and if you want to provide your direct contact info, Scott, we can put that in the show notes as well. But definitely go check out Discover Strength if there's one in your area. Get a workout in. I'm hoping to have the chance to do that soon, and really look forward to getting this episode out and giving people a chance to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing over there at Discover Strength.
Awesome, Wes. Thanks for the opportunity, and I really, really have appreciated everything along the way here. Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure, and thanks for being flexible with me today. And all this talk about weightlifting, I think I'm going to go try to lift some weights myself. You got me in the mood.
There you go. Gotta love it.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
You bet.